The sun peeked through the curtains, casting a warm glow on the room. It was the morning of my dream wedding, and excitement mixed with nervousness bubbled within me. I gazed at myself in the mirror, adorned in a beautiful white gown, feeling like a princess straight out of a fairy tale. As the minutes ticked away, my bridesmaids bustled around, helping me with the finishing touches. My best friend, Sarah, smiled at me warmly. "Cassandra, you look absolutely stunning." "Mark is going to be blown away when he sees—" I blushed, grateful for the support and love surrounding me. "Thank you, Sarah. I can't believe this day is finally here." Once we arrived at the venue, I could hardly contain my excitement. The lush gardens were adorned with flowers of every color, and the aisle was lined with petals. As I walked down the aisle, all eyes were on me, but my gaze was locked on Mark, standing at the altar looking dashing in his tuxedo. As the ceremony began, our vows were filled with promises of love and devotion. I couldn't help but smile at the thought of spending the rest of my life with him. When the moment came to exchange rings, Mark's eyes gleamed with happiness as he slipped the ring on my finger. "I promise to love you, cherish you, and support you for all the days of my life," Mark said, his voice filled with sincerity. Tears of joy welled up in my eyes, and I echoed his words, "I promise to stand by you, no matter what challenges come our way." With the exchange of rings and the pronouncement of husband and wife, the crowd erupted into applause. Our first kiss as a married couple was met with cheers and laughter. It truly felt like a dream come true. At the reception, the hall was decked out in elegance, and the atmosphere was filled with laughter and love. As we danced our first dance as husband and wife, Mark whispered in my ear, "You are the love of my life, Cassandra. I am the luckiest man in the world, and you are mine, Mark." "Today has been everything I ever hoped for," I replied, my heart overflowing with happiness. Our wedding was a magical day, a celebration of love and the beginning of our journey together. Little did I know that despite the grandeur of the day, challenges awaited, and not all our relatives were as thrilled about our union as we were. But for now, I chose to revel in the joy and love surrounding us, holding tightly to the belief that love conquers all. After the enchanting wedding day, reality began to settle in, and I couldn't ignore the underlying tension between my mother-in-law and me. Her disapproval was palpable, and it manifested in the subtlest of ways. The warmth and joy I had felt on my wedding day now seemed distant as I navigated my new life as Mark's wife. One evening, we gathered for a family dinner at my in-laws' house. As I prepared the table with the utmost care, I caught my mother-in-law's stern gaze fixed upon me. I tried to ignore it, hoping the moment would pass, but it didn't. "Cassandra, dear, do be careful with the china. It's a family heirloom," she said coldly, her eyes piercing through me. "Of course, I'll be careful," I replied, trying to mask my unease with a smile. Throughout the meal, she made snide remarks and disparaging comments, always reminding me that I was not up to her standards. My father-in-law and husband remained silent, seemingly accustomed to her behavior. It felt like I was being tested and found wanting in her eyes. I confided in my husband about my concerns, hoping he would understand my perspective. Sitting on the couch, I looked into his eyes, searching for understanding. "Mark, your mother seems to dislike me. Is there anything I can do to change that?" He glanced at me and sighed, seemingly dismissive of my worries. "Oh, don't pay too much attention to her. She's always like that. Just ignore it and get over it," he said casually, as if her behavior was insignificant. His response hurt more than I expected. I felt like he wasn't taking my feelings seriously, and it was as if he didn't see the pain his mother's coldness caused me. But I didn't want to cause any further tension between them, so I nodded, trying to hide my disappointment. As weeks turned into months, the chilly atmosphere persisted. My mother-in-law's criticisms extended beyond just me. She would often belittle my choices or opinions, making me feel small and inadequate. I longed for my husband to stand up for me, but he seemed unwilling to confront his mother. One day, after an especially difficult interaction with her, I mustered up the courage to speak to him again. "Mark, I can't pretend anymore. Your mother's behavior is affecting me deeply. I need your support." He looked at me with a hint of frustration. "Why are you making such a big deal out of it? It's just how she is. You're my wife, and I love you, but I can't change her." Those words cut deep, and I felt a growing distance between us. It was disheartening to realize that my husband wasn't willing to defend me against his mother's hurtful actions. The tension in our relationship increased, and I couldn't help but wonder if his loyalty to his mother would always come before our marriage. As the days turned into weeks, I grappled with my feelings, torn between my love for Mark and the constant emotional strain his mother's disapproval brought. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a more significant challenge that lay ahead. A challenge that would test my strength and resolve in ways I couldn't have imagined. Life in my husband's parents' house became increasingly difficult as I tried to navigate the icy waters of my mother-in-law's disapproval. Not only did I have to deal with her constant criticism, but I also found myself burdened with all the household responsibilities while she and the rest of the family seemed to do nothing. One evening, I returned home from work, exhausted and looking forward to some respite. However, as soon as I stepped inside, my mother-in-law's voice echoed through the house. "Cassandra, there you are. The floors need scrubbing and the dishes are piling up in the sink. Get to it." I tried to hide my disappointment, hoping that one day she would show even a glimmer of kindness. "Sure, I'll take care of it," I replied, mustering a faint smile. This turned into weeks, and I found myself cooking, cleaning, and taking care of the household chores, all while working a full-time job. It was an exhausting routine, and I began to feel like an unpaid maid in my own home. My husband, on the other hand, seemed unfazed by the unequal distribution of labor. One evening, when he saw me washing dishes after dinner, he called out, "Hey, don't forget to iron my shirt for tomorrow. I need it crisp and perfect." I looked at him, trying to hide my frustration. "Sure, I'll get to it," I replied, trying to sound cheerful. As I ironed his shirt later that night, I couldn't help but wonder if he saw me as anything other than a housekeeper. Our conversations were becoming more distant, and it seemed like the only time he spoke to me was to assign me tasks. One day, my best friend Sarah visited, and we spent some time in the backyard, away from the prying eyes of my in-laws. She noticed the exhaustion in my eyes and gently asked, "Cassandra, are you okay? This can't be easy for you." I took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and sadness that someone noticed my struggles. "Honestly, Sarah, it's hard. I feel like an outsider here, and I'm tired of being treated like I don't belong." She placed a comforting hand on my shoulder. "You deserve better, Cassandra. You shouldn't have to endure this. Have you talked to Mark about how you feel?" I sighed, realizing that my attempts to discuss my feelings with Mark had fallen on deaf ears. "I have, but he just tells me to ignore it and get over it. I don't think he understands how hurtful this is for me." Sarah nodded sympathetically. "You deserve a partner who supports you, not just in words, but in actions. You shouldn't have to bear the brunt of their expectations alone." Her words struck a chord with me, and I realized that I couldn't continue like this. I needed to find my voice and stand up for myself. It was time to have a serious conversation with Mark about our living situation and the emotional toll it was taking on me. As I gathered the courage to confront my husband and make him understand the depth of my pain, I knew that it was crucial for our relationship and my own well-being. Little did I know that my decision would set in motion a series of events that would ultimately lead me down a path I never imagined. As the days passed, the weight of living under my in-laws' roof grew heavier, and I could no longer ignore the strain it put on my marriage. I knew I needed to have a serious conversation with Mark about our living situation and the emotional toll it was taking on me. One evening, I sat Mark down in our bedroom, taking a deep breath to steady my nerves. "Mark, we need to talk about our living situation. I can't continue like this," I said firmly but gently. He looked at me, seemingly surprised by the seriousness in my tone. "What do you mean, Cassandra?" "I mean, living with your parents is affecting our relationship, and I feel like an outsider in my own home. Your mother's constant criticism and the unequal distribution of household responsibilities are taking a toll on me," I explained, trying to articulate the extent of my frustration. Mark sighed, looking conflicted. "I know it's not ideal, but we need to save money to buy our own place. I understand that, but we also need to find a balance. I can't be the only one taking care of everything while they do nothing," I asserted, hoping he would see the strain it was putting on our marriage. "I'll talk to my parents about it," Mark said, but his words lacked conviction. The next day, Mark talked to his parents about sharing the household responsibilities more equally. To my surprise, they reluctantly agreed, and for a brief period, things improved slightly. However, the underlying tension between my mother-in-law and me still remained, and it was clear that she was not happy about the change. During this time, we continued to save money, and eventually we found a big house that we could call our own. It was an exciting prospect, and I hoped that moving into our new home would signify a fresh start for our marriage. As the day of our move-in approached, we decided to have a housewarming party to celebrate this significant milestone. I eagerly made plans and sent out invitations to our friends and family, hoping that this event would bring us all closer together. The day before the party, I returned home from work with a sense of excitement, eager to finalize the preparations. But as I stepped inside, the house was eerily quiet, and I sensed that something was amiss. "Hello, is anyone here?" I called out, but there was no response. I walked through the rooms, feeling increasingly uneasy. And then it hit me. They had all gone to the new house without me. The realization was like a punch to the gut, and tears welled up in my eyes. I felt hurt and betrayed. Holding back my emotions, I quickly made my way to our new house, where I found everyone gathered, laughing and celebrating without me. I confronted my mother-in-law, trying to keep my voice steady. Why wasn't I invited to the housewarming party? She looked at me with a cold smile. "Oh, we didn't think there was any reason to invite the cleaning lady. This is a family gathering." The words stung, and my heart sank. I turned to Mark, hoping for some support, but he laughed along with his mother, as if my hurt didn't matter. It was in that moment that I realized I couldn't continue like this. I had endured enough mistreatment, and I knew it was time to take a stand. A surge of determination washed over me, and I made a decision that would change everything. Feeling hurt and betrayed by my mother-in-law's callous words and my husband's laughter, I fought back tears and tried to maintain my composure. Deep down, I knew that this moment was a turning point in our relationship. "You think this is a joke?" I asked, my voice trembling with emotion. "I am your wife, not just a cleaning lady. I deserve to be treated with respect and included in our own housewarming party." My mother-in-law's expression remained cold and indifferent. "You may be married to my son, but that doesn't make you one of us." Her words were like a dagger to my heart. I had hoped that, over time, she would come to accept and embrace me as a part of their family. But it was clear that her prejudice ran deep. I turned to Mark, hoping he would step up and defend me, but his silence spoke volumes. His lack of support felt like a betrayal, a painful realization that he was unwilling to stand up for me against his family. "Mark, say something?" I pleaded, my voice choked with emotion. He hesitated for a moment, but then he shook his head. "Mom, she's my wife, and she should be treated with respect. She has every right to be a part of our celebrations." His mother's eyes narrowed, and she shot him a disapproving glare. "You're making a mistake, Mark. She doesn't belong here." I felt a sinking feeling in my chest as I realized that even my husband couldn't break free from his mother's influence. The family dynamics were much more complicated than I had initially thought. In that moment, I knew I had to make a difficult decision. I couldn't continue living in a toxic environment, constantly feeling like an outsider. It was time to take control of my life and assert my worth. "I've had enough," I said firmly, wiping away the tears that threatened to spill. "I won't subject myself to this treatment any longer." My mother-in-law scoffed, crossing her arms. "What are you going to do, leave? You have nowhere else to go." That was the final straw. I had endured enough emotional abuse, and I couldn't let it continue. Summoning my courage, I spoke with a newfound determination. "Actually, I do have somewhere else to go." I had been quietly saving money, and with the help of my best friend Sarah, I had found a small apartment that I could afford. It wasn't ideal, but it was a step towards my independence and happiness. "I am leaving," I said, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside. I deserve to be treated with kindness and respect, and I won't settle for anything less. Mark's face contorted with shock, and he finally found his voice. "Cassandra, wait, let's talk about this." But I knew there was nothing left to discuss. I had tried to make things work, but I couldn't keep sacrificing my self-respect for the sake of a marriage that felt one-sided. "No, Mark, I can't stay in a place where I am constantly belittled and disrespected. I deserve better than this," I declared, my heart breaking as I walked away from the house, leaving behind the life I had once dreamt of. As I drove away, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. I had made a difficult choice, but it was the right one for my well-being. Little did I know that this decision would set off a chain of events that would lead to an unexpected outcome, one that would challenge me to stand strong and find the strength to build a new life without the toxicity that had held me back for so long. Leaving behind the house and the toxic environment was both liberating and terrifying. As I settled into my new apartment, I knew that this was the beginning of a new chapter in my life, one where I would no longer be controlled by my in-laws' disapproval and my husband's indifference. In the days that followed, I focused on healing and finding my strength. I realized that I had been giving my all to a relationship that wasn't reciprocated. It was time to take charge of my life and assert my worth. One evening, as I sat with Sarah in my new living room, I shared my thoughts with her. "Sarah, I can't keep pretending that everything is okay. I need to protect myself and move forward." She nodded, her eyes filled with compassion. "You're doing the right thing, Cassandra. It's not easy, but you deserve to be happy." As I thought about my next steps, an idea began to take shape. I had been the one financially supporting our life together, and my mother-in-law had signed the house over to me without a second thought. Perhaps this could be the key to breaking free completely. I decided to have a conversation with my mother-in-law, but this time I would be the one in control. With a sense of determination, I called her and requested a meeting. A few days later, we sat across from each other in a coffee shop. She looked expectantly at me, seemingly unaware of the storm brewing inside me. "What do you want, Cassandra?" she asked, her tone dismissive. "I want to talk about the house," I replied firmly. "Since you signed it over to me, I've been thinking about what to do with it." She raised an eyebrow, clearly curious about my intentions. "And what do you plan to do?" I took a deep breath, my heart pounding. "I want you and the rest of the family to move out." Her eyes narrowed, and her lips formed a tight line. "You can't be serious?" "I am. You made it clear that I don't belong in your family, so it's time to accept that and move on," I said, my voice steady despite the nerves that threatened to overwhelm me. "You think we'll just leave our home because you say so?" She scoffed. "It's not your home anymore," I replied, feeling a sense of empowerment building within me. "You signed it over to me. Remember? I can do whatever I want with it." She glared at me, clearly frustrated by my determination. "Fine. Take this junk and get out of our lives." As I walked away from the meeting, I knew that this was just the first step of my plan. I would need to seek legal advice to ensure that I could make this transition as smooth as possible. My goal was to sever all ties with the toxic family I had married into and start anew. With the help of a lawyer, I navigated the legal process of removing my in-laws from the house. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when I questioned whether I was doing the right thing. But I reminded myself that this was about reclaiming my life and my happiness. As the court proceedings continued, my mother-in-law's true colors were exposed. She tried to manipulate the situation, painting herself as a victim. But I stood my ground, knowing that I couldn't let her continue to control my life. Eventually, the court ruled in my favor, and I became the sole owner of both houses. The old one where my ex-husband and his family were still living, and the new one that I had purchased. With the divorce finalized and my independence secured, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. I knew that this was the right decision, and I was ready to move forward without the weight of a toxic relationship holding me back. As I stepped into my new house, the one that was truly mine, I felt a sense of accomplishment and pride. I had overcome the hurtful betrayal and taken control of my life. It was time to embrace this new beginning and build a life filled with love, respect, and the happiness I deserved. With the divorce finalized and the houses now in my name, I knew I had taken a step towards true freedom. It was both empowering and bittersweet, as I had to let go of the dreams I once had for my marriage. But it was also the beginning of a new chapter, one where I could build a life on my terms, free from toxicity and hurtful relationships. One day after the court proceedings, I received a call from my ex-mother-in-law. Part of me wanted to ignore it, but I decided to confront the situation head-on. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice firm. Her voice trembled, a hint of desperation seeping through. "Cassandra, please forgive me. We've lost everything, and we have nowhere to go. Can't we just put this behind us and move on?" I took a deep breath, reminded myself of the years of hurt and mistreatment I endured. "You had your chance to treat me with kindness and respect, but you chose not to. Now you have to live with the consequences of your action." "I know I was wrong," she pleaded, her tone seemingly sincere. "Please, let us stay with you. We have nowhere else to go." I hesitated for a moment, torn between the part of me that wanted to be compassionate and the part that knew she had shown no remorse until now. But I knew that giving in would only perpetuate the cycle of toxicity. "I'm sorry, but I can't help you. You made your choices, and now you have to face the consequences," I replied firmly, ending the call. It was a difficult decision, but I knew that allowing them back into my life would only lead to more pain and manipulation. I had to prioritize my well-being and find the strength to move forward. As time passed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I turned the old house, the one they were still living in, into a rental property. ensuring that I could secure my financial independence and start fresh. With the money I earned from the rental, I invested in myself, pursuing new hobbies and even considering furthering my education. One evening, I received an unexpected visit from my ex-husband. I was taken aback, unsure of his intentions. "Cassandra, I need to talk to you," he said, looking earnest. I motioned for him to sit, feeling a mix of apprehension and curiosity. "What is it, Mark? I know I messed up," he began, his eyes filled with regret. "I should have stood up for you and treated you better. I'm sorry for not being there when you needed me." I listened to his words, realizing that they held more weight than any apology he had given before. But I also knew that actions spoke louder than words. "I appreciate your apology, Mark, but it's not enough," I said, mustering the courage to speak my truth. "I can't forget the years of mistreatment and your lack of support. I need to move on and find happiness without you." He looked down, seemingly accepting my words. "I understand. I just wanted you to know that I regret the way things turned out." As he left, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. It was painful to see the person I once loved with such intensity, but I knew that staying tied to a toxic relationship would only hold me back. In the months that followed, I embraced my newfound independence. I surrounded myself with supportive friends and focused on building a life filled with love, joy, and self-fulfillment. As I settled into my new home, the one I had bought with my hard-earned money, I felt a sense of pride and accomplishment. I had overcome a hurtful betrayal and found the strength to stand up for myself. Looking back, I realized that seeking justice wasn't about revenge. It was about reclaiming my life and my happiness. I had learned the value of self-respect and the importance of letting go of toxic relationships. With the weight of the past lifted, I was finally free to embrace the future with hope and optimism. This was my triumph, and I was ready to embrace the journey ahead, knowing that I had the strength to face whatever life had in store for me.